Yeah, it was kind of like, don't mention it, don't talk about it. Like you said earlier, like money is one of these taboo subjects. So it was just like, sweep it under the rug, like literally and figuratively, basically.
Welcome to the Artful Dollar podcast, where we are here to really talk about money and life and business, but from a different perspective, from the viewpoint of the artist, of the spiritual seeker, of the creative, of the service professional, whomever we end up speaking with. I want to have conversations about money. It's like we don't talk about it. It's the taboo of all taboos. We will talk about our sex life before we talk about money. I find that so fascinating. That's like the untouchable, unspeakable, the name that we do not speak of. So I want to talk about it because it's so off limits. And I want to talk about it with people who I think, are going to give a different perspective, one that is more relatable, one that is a little more valuable to a different audience, because there's so many money podcasts out there. I want to be speaking to everyone that those podcasts are not speaking to. If you're a tattooer or identify as an artist or a creative or a weirdo or a spiritual seeker or a guru or a monk or all the rest of the world, that's who I want this podcast to be for, on the topic of money. But, again, we talk about money, we end up talking about our lives and all of that. So that being said, today I have a guest who is someone that I will honestly say I've been admiring your work, your career, since far before I was tattooing. I'd look at these magazines and I'm like, how the fuck does anyone do that? And now 20 years later, or, I guess, I've been tattooing for about 15 years. So 15, 16, 17 years later, after first seeing you in magazines, we're here talking about money. And I want to welcome Nick Baxter to the podcast. Welcome, Nick.
Yeah, thank you so much for the very flattering intro, and thanks for having me. Very glad to be here, and it's fun to talk about this stuff because it's outside the beaten path of like what I would normally talk about.
Yeah, that's what I love. It's like, I want to get people that are used to talking about anything other than this, and then let's talk about that, So I'll just, start maybe just by saying how we met, and then I want to hear a little bit about your story and stuff like that. But I was invited out to speak, like a speaking engagement, a little seminar at a tattoo shop, Pigment, in Austin, Texas, owned by Jeremy Miller. He was very gracious enough to invite me out there. I was like, cool, this is like my first like real live speaking thing. I did a little thing at the Explorer Expo a couple months ago, but this was like my first real presentation, and I didn't know what to expect, but I was just kind of open to anything and everything. They were like, oh yeah, I think Nick Baxter's going to be here. I was like, oh, that cool. Awesome. Yeah. All right. And I was very excited to meet you. I was trying to play it cool. I think I did an okay job doing that, but no, I just so admire you and your work, and tattooing is one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. I have a degree in jewelry and metalsmithing, and I think skin and metal are like equally as unforgiving. It's like that one split second, and all of a sudden, it's fucked. So yeah, I was super stoked, and just in general, like everyone was super nice and like engaged, and I love how hungry tattooers are for this kind of information. So we got introduced and we started talking, and I said, hey, you want to talk to me on a podcast sometime? And you shared a little bit about just your background with money, but I'd love to hear from you. What were you and money like when you started tattooing? What was your relationship with money like?
Well, I mean, I grew up very solidly middle class in the Connecticut suburbs. We had stuff growing up, and money wasn't necessarily an issue, but my dad was a small business owner, and so he definitely passed on a very, I would say, stingy mindset, like a very saving, frugal mentality, just from being a small business owner trying to provide, for us as a family. So, I mean, he did very well for himself, and we had like a comfortable life for sure. But there was always that kind of aura around it of like, be very selective with how you spend your money or how you use your money. So coming into tattooing, I had that kind of unquestioned child programming. So I've always been a great saver. Like, it's one of those things that kind of like worked in my favor. So I had that going for me of like always knowing like, okay, I need to live frugally. I need to do more with less money wise. I need to stretch every dollar I can.
So that was the inherited relationship in a way.
Yeah.
Do you have any siblings, by the way?
I do. I have an older sister. She's 2 years older than me, and she's followed a very different life path. But I think she has a very similar attitude, on the topic of money.
The reason I was asking is that I've found that people either emulate their parents' relationship with money or they resist their parents' relationship and they try to do the exact opposite.
Yeah.
And in many ways, I think I did that. Like, my parents weren't like the best saver, and also grew up very middle class. My dad is a therapist. My mom is a painter, and he grew up very poor. They definitely weren't lavish by any means. I don't know that they were stingy, but they saved. And I remember thinking, like, man, when I get older, I'm just gonna buy all the fucking shit I want because you won't let me get it now, or something like that. So I sort of resisted. I did the opposite. It's interesting that you emulated your father.
Yeah, that is actually kind of interesting to hear you describe that trend or whatever, that phenomenon you always see, because I have rebelled against my father and my family so hard in like every other way since, as I've matured and gotten into middle age myself, I'm not as much in that like rebellious mindset. But when I came into tattooing, I was very much rebelling against my family upbringing and what was expected of me in life and what my parents thought I should be doing. I definitely didn't think I should be tattooing. So, I mean, my mindset around money was what I already said, that was kind of programmed into me. But I also had a very rebellious, countercultural, like punk rock, hardcore music, anarchism, like fuck the system, like, money's evil, corporate America's evil. So let me try to exist on as little money as I can so that I just can wash my hands of it altogether and not have the blood on my hands because I'm better than that. Which is a ridiculous story to me now, but at the time, that's a very valid place for someone to be in, if they're like finding their own way in the world as I was and trying to, like discover who I was and embark on my career and life journey,
Yeah, and I can 100% relate to that. I think so many of us can. We look at the way the world is, the system, the way capitalism is used, because I don't believe that capitalism is inherently evil, but I think it gets used in pretty terrible ways. But it's because sometimes can be hard to separate the people from the money, from the system, and what's what. And so you're just saying, like, I fuck everything, fuck all of it. It's evil. Money's evil. Yeah, I 100%. In New York City, punk rock scene and fuck capitalism that's just what you did. It was just like natural. There was no choice in the matter even. It's just what you did,
Yeah, so I think because of that, interesting combo of factors for me personally, being a program saver, but also like fuck the system, and being a tattooer where you make good money. Like if you're good at it, you make good money and it's cash in your hand every day.
Yeah.
At least back then, that was before all the digital payments and everything.
Right.
So that was in like 2000 to 2005 were like my first 5 years of like full-time tattooing. So because of that unique combo, I mean, I was living like an anarchist punk rocker, like on next to nothing, and like, dumpster diving and stuff, and just stacking cash, just stacking like pirate booty, like in my closet, like under my mattress, like just stacks of cash that I, in hindsight, obviously I know now, like you can't put that money to work for you. It's just staying there, actually losing its value due to inflation. But at the time I was definitely like the typical like ghetto rich or something, like living very, like I was very poor and punk rock, but definitely had a cushion of my own making, through my own hard work and just making much more than I was spending.
Yeah. Was there some kind of conflict for you about that? Like, oh, I'm making all this money. Did you feel some type of way about it? Or was it just like, were you proud of it? Like, how did you feel at the time, given this sort of contrast?
It was always an internal conflict. Yeah. And to be honest, I still feel that conflict today, that internal conflict, but I approach it differently today. Yeah. It was kind of like, don't mention it. Don't talk about it. Like you said earlier, like money is one of these taboo subjects. So it was just like, yeah, you know what, just don't ever make it a thing. Just live my life, and money shouldn't be a thing. I still believe money shouldn't be like the dictating force of how you treat somebody or how you judge them or view them. So
sure.
To me, it was just like sweep it under the rug, like literally and figuratively, basically, and just kind of do my thing and just live according to my beliefs. I was actually in a good position to help a lot of causes that I believe in, monetarily. Because I could. So that was cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, all you artful listeners. I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you for giving a listen to the podcast. I hope that it's bringing some value to you in your life. That's really why I started this podcast. And if you're getting something useful or valuable out of it, I just want to invite you to go rate and review this podcast. It really helps me out. And it also helps other people find this podcast so that they can get some value out of it. They can feel more free around money and just get some wisdom and some knowledge that we're trying to share on here. So again, I'm not really asking anything else of you other than to just leave a review and rating for this podcast. It really helps me out and it helps other people find us. So thanks and enjoy the show. And so that went on for a while and it worked for a while. What was the point at which you sort of thought that maybe this doesn't work or this isn't working for me to do it the way I'm doing it? Was there a point or was it kind of gradual?
It was a gradual buildup of fear, anxiety, paranoia, because obviously I wasn't claiming the money I was making, seriously living like a full-on pirate anarchist, rebellious soul that I tend to naturally be. But as I started to make more and more money and get more successful in my career, my name is out there very publicly. I'm doing conventions, I'm doing guest spots, I'm in magazines. My name is out there, and I'm making good money, which you can obviously do as a good tattooer. So
you tell the IRS you do this for free. It's just I'm just a charitable pro bono tattoo artist.
Yep. Yeah. It's all just for a 6-pack of beer or whatever, trading. So
I have definitely paid a pack of cigarettes and some Chinese food for a tattoo, and that's what it costs. Yeah.
So yeah, just the paranoia, the fear of, just having to live my life secretively in so many ways. And then as I just got older and matured, and my self-image, my story for what I want in my life and how I see the world just naturally started to evolve, as it does as we age and mature. And I started to want different things, and I could not get those things living that way with my money. So I started to want more security, more stability. I started to want bigger, better things. Honestly, you can't do that until you put yourself financially on the map and start claiming the cash you're making. It was a very, very tough transition. There was a lot of internal conflict and just begrudgingly forcing myself to do stuff and just hating it.
What? Can you give an example?
Oh, just hiring my first accountant ever and just saving receipts, keeping track of stuff, swallowing that really bitter pill of pirate anarchist for so long, of being wow, I'm going to actually give a chunk of this away to the government. What the fuck? Every fiber in my being is no, I do not believe in so much of what our government does. Why am I going to put that money in their hands to keep doing this awful stuff with? So
how do you deal with that, on a personal level for yourself? Is there something, or is it just a thing that you just do every year and you fucking hate it and there's nothing else you can do about it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not thrilled about it, but I see it as the gateway to opportunities that I would never have otherwise. I just have the ongoing dialogue within myself, the angel on one shoulder, the devil on the other shoulder, and it's a constant little conflict inside. But the part of me that hopes for or yearns for or has these bigger goals wins out, and it's just the price to pay for the membership in our subscription-based society.
It is a subscription-based society. It really is. People complain about video games these days being pay to win. Maybe to some degree, yeah, sure. This woman, her name's Barry Tesler. She's a money therapist, I guess, money coach, money therapist. She runs a course called The Art of Money. She's been a big inspiration of mine for a long time. And in her book, she comes from a little more of a hippie, I guess, or a free thinker, free-spirited background. Certainly not in support of nefarious, whatever, dark shadow wars and stuff like that. I don't think anyone's a fan of shadow wars that I know of. But, she said, I know when I pay taxes, it's going towards these things, and it's really hard for me to cope with that. But I think she was in Colorado or somewhere, and she was saying there was some natural disaster and how the National Guard or someone had to come and rescue people. And she's well, I am also paying for that. And, there is also these schools, and there's also the streets and the road lights. I cross the street safely, and for all the terrible things that the police department does, I suppose they do also genuinely help people from time to time. And it was helpful for her to remind herself, and I certainly took a lot from that of like, yes, this tax money, is part of it going to things that I don't agree with? Absolutely. Is part of it going to things that I really do find helpful in my life and helpful to others? 100%. And then if I really want to make sure that my tax dollars or my dollars are going to somewhere where I want to go, I can donate to charities that I feel, passionate about. So I've, been doing that over the years, and that's kind of been the give and take. I don't think it's ever perfect, but the juice is worth the squeeze at the end of the day for me in my life.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think like what you said, like as your mind matures, and you can think longer term, like the youthful mind and just being young and crazy. It's just all about like right now, right? It's very like in the moment, and you can't see like bigger, longer horizons like out into the distance. But as you mature, I feel like most humans acquire that skill of mind, of thinking, and in doing so, you can have a more complex or like a more nuanced, better calculation of like pros and cons, and like I do this, but I get this in return down the line, and there's just a bigger picture. There's just a wider awareness we're able to have as we get older. So I definitely went through that process, and so I sucked
How
up like
old
how was
were
saying,
you when you think that was starting to really shift for you?
early to mid 30s.
Early to mid 30s. Yeah, that's about the age, right? And I feel like a lot of us think like, I'm probably not going to live to be 25 years old, and then all of a sudden we're 30 years old. And
Yeah. It's like the 20s are for being crazy, and the 30s are for like starting to figure it out, and then your 40s is like, it's like hitting that age of like wisdom and starting to want to maybe like leave something behind, or whatever, like a legacy.
so how old are you? I actually don't know how old you are.
I'm 41.
41. Wow, I thought we were the same. I'm 36. I thought we were the same age. The years have treated you well, my friend.
Well, maybe on the outside, but not on the inside, man. Aches and pains.
Yeah, of the industry, right? Of the job we do. Have you found like health-wise, tattooing-wise, that impacts your, ability to earn money or make money just to dealing with the physical aspect of the job?
I mean, it's just a mind game. It's how much can I endure, really? There isn't a single tattoo without some kind of chronic pain at this point.
Really?
So it's just like, how much do I feel like enduring? It can be a limiting factor, but I also have a very high tolerance, and I will put myself through hell if I want something.
Have you seen the guy? I think his name is Jordan. I spoke with him. The tattoo hand therapist.
I haven't seen that.
Oh, he's on Instagram. You check him out. I think it just goes by the tattoo hand therapist, but he's like a physical therapist that focuses on tattooers and hand pain, but I think just all around body wellness. And he actually posted something a little while ago. That's what made me ask the question, is like the cost of tattooers needing to take time off or, stop working or reduce the number of hours that they work per day because of physical pain. And that the cost per year was like in the millions of dollars, if you added it all up.
I'm very strict and intentional with my schedule, with my time. I'm very, very conscious more and more, the older I get, of what my limits are, physically. And so I'm trying not to exceed those, the older I get.
Do you see a timeline of like by which you won't be able to tattoo or don't want to tattoo? Or
I love making art. I love tattooing. So I hope to always do it in some capacity. But yeah, I don't have a specific timeline in mind. I mean, maybe that's something I should maybe even be more intentional about. But I just always want to be able to have the option to do this. So I'm not thinking about a super intentional, like tapering down to nothing. I definitely want to always do it in to some degree.
Right. I'll talk to people who will say things like, I've had all kinds of trolls on social media. By the very nature of me trying to help the tattoo industry, the trolls will come out and start to try to poke holes in what I'm doing. And they'll say, oh, well, real tattooers don't retire. We just, tattoo until we die. And I say, look, that's all fine. Like, if you want to tattoo until you die, great, more power to you. I just don't want you to need to tattoo until you die to make a living. That's my hope for people. But if you want a tattoo until you die, I think it's great. Me personally, I cannot picture myself being 70 years old and wanting to tattooing at those upper echelons of the age range. I feel like that would be real tough. I think one of the things that got me to really start to take my finances more seriously was realizing that there were people I tattooed around, tattooers that I knew that were 10 years older than I was in my mid-20s, and they were in the exact same position that I was in. They hadn't done anything, and you were saying, like, as you get older, you start to see horizons differently, and I wonder, sometimes we don't. I don't know.
Yeah, the counter to what I said earlier is you could obviously point to so many people in life who just never like evolve or grow beyond a certain point, and then they just live their life in this loop over and over again forever. For anyone who just has somehow just the spark of awareness just worms its way into their psyche, they will eventually get to the point of being more aware and being able to think bigger.
Yeah.
Longer term, bigger visions start to evolve and drop what doesn't serve them,
Do you ever think or regret or wish back that you had done something differently or sooner than you had done it?
Absolutely. Oh yeah. I mean, for sure. Not like in a visceral way to where I'm like beating myself up.
Sure.
I'm definitely like happy overall in life. And my journey's been a cool and interesting and unique one, but absolutely. I mean, knowing what I know now, of course, I mean, hindsight, it's like, dude, what was I doing for so long? I mean, had I only known, oh my God, I'd be just like not even have to work at this point,
Right. All those years of stacking pirate booty. What do you wish you had done with it?
Definitely invested it. I mean, there's so many things that I was kind of hip to or aware of, and had I put that money to work in those areas, it would have, I wouldn't just not even have to work right now. It would just be for fun.
Yeah, I the simplest one for me is just I wish I'd started putting money in my retirement account sooner. Something just very simple like that. Because when I started to realize, okay, well now in order to hit my goals, I have to put so much more aside every single month. Had I started sooner, it would have made that situation a hell of a lot easier.
I mean, I think that's where I'm at too. Kind of getting a supposedly late start on retirement saving. I'm trying to be more aggressive in how I save, and I definitely feel the push. It's definitely an internal pressure in my mind of okay, it's a little more serious. I would love that to not be there. I would love it to just be a little bit lighter, but I got, it's just a function of timing and having missed all those years.
And at the same time, we can't let that regret or the woulda, coulda, shouldas, the best time to start is now, whenever now is, the best time to take a new action. I took drum lessons for 3 years from 28 to 31, something like that. And I kept putting it off. It was something I always wanted to do. And I kept putting it off thinking, I'm too, I'm 26. I'm too old to start this now. By the time I get good, I'll be X, but eventually I just was I'm just going to start, because however old I'll be when I'm good is however old I'll be, but if I keep thinking, oh, it's too late, I'll just never get that, get that start. The hardest part is just starting.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I was talking about before with that few year period of me realizing I needed to change what I was doing. That's where you're just leaning into your boundaries and your limits and really pushing them and getting into that uncomfortable territory of I don't know what I'm doing. This is new and scary. So.
Yeah, I think it's just the newness and the unfamiliarness of it. And a lot of people I talk to, they're just so afraid they're going to do something wrong. And then the repercussions of that are going to be too much or something. Have you ever made a big mistake or fuck something up royally that?
Yeah. I mean, when I was doing the painful conversion towards filing a C Corp and then transitioning that to an S Corp because it was more tax advantaged, and switching accountants, and the new accountant wasn't being in my opinion, as thorough as he could have been. And so I got hit with a tax penalty of hey, you didn't pay all this. I'm what the hell? I thought we were good. I did all the stuff you told me to do. And I don't know, some T's didn't get crossed, some I's didn't get dotted somewhere. But I messed up. I got this tax penalty from the IRS, this letter in the mail saying I owed them thousands more. And I was pissed and upset, but I don't know. Then you just pay it and just move on with your life. You just can't dwell on things.
Yeah. And it's avoiding taking the action, the fear of making the mistake, the fear of getting started. You got your money's worth, right? You made the mistake, you paid the price, but now you know, and you can do it better and you can grow from it, right?
Yeah. So because of that little incident and just other little experiences and incidents along my path to where I am now financially, like, yeah, it's just been like a learning process of like cobbling things together, just kind of like piecing this to this, patching this with this. And it's just like, I've built into a system that works for me. And then I discovered what you were doing and I was like, oh my God, why? Just like the years of like painful transition, like here it all is packaged so nicely and convenient and amazingly. And it's easy and it's simple and you got it broken down so thoroughly. I was like, yep, that's what I painfully sort of like haphazardly pieced together for myself.
So when I did this presentation, I kind of shared with the room that, where Nick came to watch me. Yeah, just what the system kind of looks like from a bird's eye view, and then how it has impacted my life and how it could impact people's lives. And we chatted a little bit after that. You're like, yeah, I definitely want to chat. I was like, cool. Yeah, anytime, let's book a call. And you scheduled something with me and I was like, cool, I'm stoked to help Nick see what's possible for him in finances. And you got on the call and you were like, I have some questions maybe about some real estate stuff that I'm doing, but you said you were maybe interested in a job opportunity. And I was like, never in a million years would I've ever expected Nick Baxter to be asking me for a job. I just never thought that was going to be a reality. And I was yeah, exactly. And so then we had a pretty fascinating conversation. I was just excited that anyone, whether it's you or it doesn't matter, just that anyone is inspired by this stuff enough to not just learn it themselves, but to want to teach it to other people. That really excites me. It lets me know, like, okay, this is needed in the world. You had set up some systems in place, but then you kind of realize there's always more to go and more to learn. But I'm curious, we talked a little bit about it, but tell me more about like when did you start to think that maybe you wanted to help people with their finances? Because it seemed like that happened far before we had ever talked.
For me, that point was like at the beginning of the pandemic in 2020 when everything shut down and my tattoo business had to shut down. And I was like many tattooers, being like, okay, what else can I get into just in case? And obviously ended up I didn't need to do it. But one of those things was, man, like I've been doing really good on my like financial journey lately, and I've like had some awesome wins and started to realize it was a very fun kind of interest of mine. And I was like, I would love to help other people with my similar like mentality or journey or struggles, like really show them like you don't have to be struggling in the ways that you're struggling. Like here's how you can do this, and just have that fulfillment of being able to give back to the community that's given so much to me, So it was around the beginning of the pandemic, and I kind of looked briefly into like financial coaching classes and like getting certain certifications, but never ended up following through with any of it. Because we were able to reopen and I got back to tattooing and everything. But
so the only difference between us is that my state stayed closed longer. But if you had stayed closed longer, we could be in totally different. I'd be asking you for a job here.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, that's state blue state vibe,
Right.
Text like get back to work.
Get back to work. Yeah, we were closed for like 4.5 months over here. Yeah. How long were you closed for?
It was a solid 3 months.
Okay, yeah. It wasn't that much less, yeah.
Yeah, well, it wasn't that much less, but people, I mean, especially in Austin, yeah, it's just a different vibe here than New York City. People are a lot chill, and they were a lot more chill about coronavirus for sure.
I'm sure. Just so you know, people were not chill about it in New York City. There was no chill. Zero. Well, that's not true. Like, I was a new parent at the time, so I was zero chill. I was forcing my wife to, mat aside the counters and alcohol all of our, produce. And because we had a newborn kid. And then there were the people that it's as if nothing, was there for them. So it was a very polarized over here.
Yeah. I mean, it was still some of that polarization here in Austin, Texas, but I would imagine much, much different than New York City.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
First of all, it's like it's still a red state. And then second of all, Austin's just like this kind of like college party town mentality, like
Yeah.
anyway. So it's just the overall vibe here is just like chill out, have fun, or what, it's just, I don't know.
I was only there for a couple days, but I loved the vibe. It was like, it felt a little bit like LA, but I liked it more. It wasn't more chill. LA is super chill, but like, I don't know. There's
It's just less pretense.
less pretentious or something like that. Yeah. I was like, well, shit, I don't know what's going to happen with tattooing. I got this baby. She was like 4 months old when the pandemic hit. And I think there was definitely this fear of providing for my daughter that like really propelled me to say like, okay, I need to figure out how to make money online. I had at that point been thinking about financial coaching for maybe 2 years. So it wasn't a total whim, maybe because I had a kid or something. There was a fear that drove me pretty intensely into it. And I immediately was taking courses and classes. And
I don't have kids. So yeah, like I can't imagine how scary that must have been.
I was very jealous of my single friends or my, friends that didn't have kids who could be like, oh, we just went camping for 4 months. I'm like, that's cool. I lived in a 700 square foot, box with a screaming toddler and fear of the global pandemic. So very different experiences of those years.
It tested the fabric of society for sure. It stretched it to its, to being pretty taut and threadbare,
Yeah. And then we came back and it was like tattooing was bigger than it had ever been.
Yeah, kind of seemed that way for sure. It was just like, all right, the party's back on. Like, we're not doing COVID anymore. Like, let's get it.
And then all that stimulus money and everything, I was sort of in the beginning of my coaching career, but I was still tattooing full time. And so I was like torn because people were making these very bad financial decisions by hiring me to tattoo them with their financial. I'm like, you should really be putting the stimulus money in a Roth IRA, but yeah, sure. I'll do your tattoo. Why not? Do you ever have financial conversations with your clients?
I've had a few of them. Yeah. But I don't imagine to the extent maybe that you have for sure. I don't know. You seem like a very open book. I tend to be a lot more reserved. So yeah, like less open, I guess, about my life than you might be.
Yeah.
With that.
I'm a little bit more of an open book for sure. I call myself a financial nudist. So I'll just tell you anything you want to know about my finances. I'm in the course, I'm like showing everyone my bookkeeping, and it literally has all the guts of my business are out and splayed open on the table for everyone to see.
Yeah, it gives me anxiety. So
yeah,
which is, that's another interesting part of like what you talk about like in your course, as far as like the mindset and like everyone's attitudes towards money. And like, I definitely still have a lot of that like fear around like being open and communicating with strangers about money and like my personal money. It's like the fear of being judged, the fear of, I don't know, just like something happening to me of like what they might be thinking. I don't know. It's weird.
Totally. No, I mean, I experience it as well. I don't think it's just tattoo culture, but there is sort of something where like anytime anyone starts doing really well, like people kind of start hating on that person. I've noticed. I'm not pointing fingers out, but like everyone, hates on that shop, Bang Bang in New York City because they charge outrageous prices. I'm like, good for them. And then, sometimes the tattoos are this, people have all the judgments, but it's like, look, if they're charging it and they're in business and it's working for them and they can do it over, I have no judgments on them. Great. I also love that I'm not competing with them as a tattooer. They are tattooing clients that I in no way want to be tattooing. So I think that's wonderful that those clients have a place to go. Have you noticed that like people will hate on you if they think you're doing too well?
Yeah, I mean, judgment is such a huge aspect of our society, and like the sort of like caste system mentality of like, oh, I'm working class, and like, oh, I hate that rich person, like look at the car they're driving, it's just like built-in like bias that's like largely unquestioned. I don't know where it all comes from or whatever. So like myself, like becoming a homeowner in recent years and stuff, that was like, now I own property, and it's like a thing, so now it's like, I'm like afraid of being judged on certain things like that, and just, I don't know, it's just weird. Part of it is like my own stuff I'm projecting outwards, but like the other part of it is I actually have experienced some judgments and been like, really, man, come on, I'm like the same person.
Yeah, a lot of that keeps us from wanting to do well, wanting to succeed beyond the status quo because we're afraid of that judgment. I definitely dealt with that for a while. And I actually worked with a purely just mindset coach. It wasn't like a money coach or anything. It was just someone that did mindset coaching through like Bob Proctor and Gallagher Institute. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but she really helped me see how I was like anchored into these numbers. Like, oh, I just need to make 150K a year. Like then that will be good. I'll be really happy at that, and that will signify whatever. And she was like, why is that number the number for you? Like, why don't you want to make $1 million a year? And I was like, well, it's not that I wouldn't be mad if I made, but I was anchored at like this number that I felt was I felt it was achievable. I felt like it was within my reach, given my past, given what I had earned in the past as a tattooer and a shop owner, that, a net income of 150K a year was doable. But yeah, it was also like, I'm worried, will other people that work at my shop judge me for doing well? Now that I own a shop, it's kind of weird. I own a tattoo studio, but I'm not tattooing. I do worry, and I try to give my artists the best life and experience they can have. In the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, are they judging me for, doing this finance thing? And it's all right. Maybe they are. I love them anyway, but who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's like weird to change your position in life. And I don't know, like you see yourself and you see people seeing you in a certain way. And then now you're seeing yourself different. Maybe you are being different. And now you're worried like how people are going to see you. I don't know. So yeah, I've kind of had the same, like a similar type of shift as I've been on this journey that I described earlier of just like changing my mentality and like what I'm doing in life and the things I want.
Do you believe that or identify or resonate with that saying that, you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with?
Like, yeah, if I were to like meditate on that, for sure, that does resonate with me.
Yeah. I feel like our mindsets sync up with the mindsets of those people that we, surround ourselves with. And I don't necessarily surround myself with entrepreneurs that are, aiming to become millionaires, but I do try to, interact with people that are playing, say, a bigger entrepreneurial game than I am even. And sometimes I feel worried, or is it okay that I'm sharing success that I'm having with friends of mine that maybe they're struggling, and is that appropriate, or is that, am I not reading the room well? And it is weird. Sometimes it's like, I just want to be excited. I'm excited, I'm an excited person.
I mean, like water finds its own level, and all those type of sayings, regardless of the outcome of what you just said of like, oh, should I talk to this person or who do I surround myself with? Like water's always going to find its own level, right? So
yeah, I like that.
Over time, the truth is going to like show itself of like who ends up vibrating on your same frequency,
Speaking of frequency, I teach a lot of stuff on, manifestation and, shifting your mindset. Does that ever resonate with you, or what do you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've done a lot of like self-development courses in my life, and I've read a lot of books around that. And, the stuff you have in your course, in the Artful Dollar course, is amazing. All that stuff applies for sure. And I'm constantly trying to address that in myself and work on it and see where I can improve, see where I'm limiting myself, and see where I can actually push myself to achieve bigger, better things that make me happier.
Yeah. Awesome, dude. Well, is there anything else, any last messages or anything else you want to leave the listener with? I mean, I'm also excited about the prospect of us doing more work together, and hopefully there'll be more to share. Yeah. I'm just curious if there's any last thoughts.
Yeah. For me, I could say, a huge part of the journey, and of course it relates to finances and money, is self-awareness, self-knowledge, understanding yourself. So for me, a huge part of that has been this thing called Enneagram. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm at Enneagram 8 with a 5 wing. I can't remember, something like that.
Well, the wings are always the number next to it.
Right. So 8 with a 7 wing, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, when I read it, it was like basically like I'm designed to be a coach, like was like kind of what I gathered from it. Yeah.
and you live into that aura so perfectly. Like you're excellent at what you do. You're excellent at coaching, speaking, and just like inspiring others. Like, so definitely you are being the 8 that you are.
Yeah.
And so when I like dove into Enneagram, that was another huge shift in my life and my mindset of like, oh, I am like this, like, oh my God, here's why I do XYZ. And so naturally that filtered into, of course, every area of my life, including finance and money. So once I understood that I was a type 1 with a 9 wing, things just clicked into place, and I was able to be like, okay, like I understand why I do this. And I understand also that I could do this instead if previous thing isn't working. And I can just have that self-awareness of like how I want to live and how I want, money and finances to be in my life, or how I want them to work for me, instead of having it be like a bad or a negative thing. So that might have been, just like the last thing I could say that we hadn't talked about, and that might be helpful to people, is like look into Enneagram or some kind of like just self-awareness modality, just to understand yourself. And then from there, I feel like things get much easier and much smoother.
Maybe we talk about having you come into the course and talk about Enneagrams, if that's something you feel inspired to talk about.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm definitely huge into it. I've done several workshops in it, several like immersive, kind of like landmark forum style workshops, except for Enneagram.
Wow, I didn't even know. What I liked about the Enneagram too is it talks about like, so an 8 at their worst would look like this, or this aspect of an 8 would represent itself or express itself like this at its worst and like this at its best. And it was just interesting to see sort of, and I was like, that's exactly how I am when I'm not taking care of myself, when I'm not, doing the things, when I'm not being aware or present or at my best. That's how I am, and what's possible when I do kind of the things that need to be done. The other one is human design. Have you gotten into that one?
Yeah, I've looked into that a little bit.
Yeah, that one's also pretty fascinating. I have some friends that get into that. So cool, man. Well, maybe that's a conversation for another time, but I'll drop a link. There's some Enneagram website that I've used. It's free, and you can take a test and get your Enneagram if anyone's listening and they're curious, because super valuable.
Yeah. And I've heard just one last piece of that is like and I can relate to this being true, like when you've correctly typed yourself, there's this like sinking feeling of dread and shame and anxiety. Like, oh my God, like I do all of that. What the fuck, And so that's how you know you got your type right.
Right. If you have that sense of dread, it's almost just like, oh, I'm not special or something. I'm just like every other this out there or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Or like what you just said of like that's me at my worst. Like, oh yeah, I definitely do that shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then there's like the aspirational part of like who we all want to be or hope we are, or like think we are, but we're not. And so if it's like rewarding to that part of you, it honestly may not necessarily be the correct type. Because there should be this feeling of like nakedness of like, oh yeah, wow, I am found out right now.
Yes, yeah, I am found out right now, and that isn't. Yeah, it's inherently not a good feeling. It's not a great feeling for sure, but it is certainly very valuable, very useful.
Definitely. Not to get caught up in the negativity of that feeling. It's just a temporary passing thing. It's actually the most useful feeling from that point forward.
100%. Very cool. I love that as your last message to end on. So thank you for that, Nick. Thanks for being who you are in the world, in the tattoo industry, and being so committed to education on so many levels. And I'm excited to explore what it looks like to teach money with you and anyone else who ends up joining me on this journey, because I need help. There's a lot. I'm drowning in tattoo artists that need support and want support. And, what's cool is that it's not like a group of misfits by any means. It's actually a group of incredibly talented tattooers. Some of my favorite tattooers are in this course, and they're just, no one taught us how to do money, and that's all. And they're just looking to better themselves. And so,
I love the community aspect of it. And just like, man, like all these people like give a shit. That is like super encouraging for me to be taking part in. Is like people who give a shit. That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, it is. It is awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome, dude. Well, enjoy the rest of your day. Take care of that pup. And
yes, sorry if the dog barking is throughout there.
It was totally fine. No issues at all. And,
little fuzzy toddler.
I look forward to next time, man. Cool.
All right, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed the show. Again, I just want to prompt that if you got some value out of this conversation, please go and leave us a rating and a review on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you saw this podcast. It really helps me out, and it really helps other people to find this podcast. I want more people to have these types of conversations around money so that we can all be more free and at ease and abundant and able to create the lives that we really want to live. So please share this and rate and review. Appreciate it. Thanks. Bye.